but I do want to talk about what took place in Georgia in February, which is second most trending story on Twitter. And if it wasn't for the coronavirus, this is George Zimmerman, Trayvon Martin times 5. This is a very serious story, and it needs to be talked about, and it needs to be discussed. If you really want to talk about a civil crime, it's not what Governor Sisolak has done. It's what, in my personal opinion, 2 white men did to an African-American. Let me explain. His name is Ahmaud Arbery. Okay? It happened in Georgia. It happened in February. Arbery was a 25-year-old African-American man. The only crime he had ever committed, as far as I know, is shoplifting. He spent much of his time running for exercise in the city of Brunswick, Georgia, southeast coast. This happened on February 23rd, which is quite a long time ago, by the way, might I add. Arbery was spotted jogging through his neighborhood. A man by the name of Gregory McMichael. He believed, and by the way, there's no evidence to support this, that Arbery looked like a suspect in a recent break-ins, according to a police report that was published by the New York Times. One of those burglaries was reported to the Glynn County Police Department January 1st and February 23rd. It involved a pistol taken from a pickup truck outside of McMichael's home. Again, no evidence that this guy, Ahmaud Arbery, was ever involved in that.
He didn't have cameras or anything like that?
No evidence. No evidence. Zero. McMichael is 64 years old, and his son Travis McMichael are 34 years old. They're seen on social media with pictures with moose. They hunted a lot, and they armed themselves with a handgun and a shotgun, decided to take matters into their own hands. Very important to note that Gregory McMichael, the father, at one point was a police officer. Not a police officer anymore. Not at all.
So he can't hide behind the badge.
No police office, nothing. They chased Arbery in a truck. Chased him, okay? Like a police officer would chase a suspect in a car.
Right.
That's exactly what they did, and there's a video to prove it. Gregory McMichael told police that he shouted to Arbery, "Stop, stop, we want to talk to you." Arbery didn't have to talk to anybody. They're complete strangers. He doesn't know who these people are. According to the statements of the 2 white men that are still alive in this situation, they pulled up beside him in a truck. There's video that shows that. They basically bamboozled him. It was an ambush. That's basically what it was. It was an ambush. The video clearly shows that. And then the report suggests a third person may have also been involved in the pursuit. Well, of course, that's very, very possible in this situation. What happens next is so troubling. And I don't know. I would imagine Ahmaud Arbery was scared.
Was this like an empty road?
Yeah.
Was it a...
Yeah, let me just continue.
Okay.
I'll answer that. It wasn't an empty road, but let me just continue. Let me get through the story, and then we'll talk about it. What happens next is so troubling. The video shows him running, and then all of a sudden a struggle with the son for the weapon. The son fires his weapon 3 times, striking Ahmaud, and then he hits the ground and he dies. Now, I have no doubt that it could be a possibility where this kid, Arbery, engaged the kid with the gun. To me, that's here nor there.
Well, why wouldn't you?
I'm sure he was scared and frightened, and I don't blame him. The father's seen in the pickup truck taking out his pistol. These 2 dummies, these 2 criminals, and I don't think it's a stretch to call them murderers, followed this kid for no reason. They could have just called the police. They did call 911, and then when the 911 dispatcher asked them, well, what did you see this kid do? They didn't respond to that question. All they said was, it's a black man jogging down the road. That's what they said. They didn't even cite a crime that they thought he had committed. And even if they did, worst case scenario, you call the effing police. You don't follow someone and act like you are a police officer with a badge. Here's the issue I have.
Well, they didn't have lights on the top of their car or their truck, did they?
Completely academic, whether they had lights or not. That has nothing to do with it. Even if they had the brightest lights in the world, they still have no right following this kid, acting like a police officer with weapons. And I'm tired of people that think they're wannabe cops like the George Zimmermans of the world that think it's okay to act like a police officer. Here's what makes this even worse. If that's not bad enough, and yes, I do think it's murder. Now, whether you want to call it involuntary manslaughter, whatever the case, these 2 should be in jail. This father has connections to the Attorney General. He has connections to law enforcement. Police told this victim's mom that day that this kid, Ahmaud Arbery, was shot in a home invasion. They lied to the mother. They told the mother that he not only was in a house in a home invasion, but the home invader shot him in self-defense. Complete lie. They hid this under the rug, and I have no doubt the reason why they did it is because this guy, McMichael, has those connections in law enforcement. They never were arrested. In fact, they didn't even get so much as citing or a speeding ticket. Nothing. You get more accountability if you go through a stop sign. Now, what would have happened if this video wasn't released? I'll tell you what would have happened. These two would have never been arrested, and we wouldn't be talking about this story right now.
They would have most likely, if they did commit murder, and it sounds to me like they both definitely did, premeditated, and I'll add to that, they would have most likely gotten away with it.
And this is the problem with society today. Would George Zimmerman be in jail right now if there was a video? Probably. We wouldn't be talking about this case if there wasn't a video. Why now are we now learning about this several months later? It's very simple. It's a simple explanation for this, and it's disgusting. That police department should be ashamed of themselves. The Attorney General should be ashamed of himself, and many have recused themselves from this case. They tried to hide this story under the rug. They didn't want it to go public, but you know what? It did, and it's out there now. And I'm telling you right now, this is 5 times more potent than George Zimmerman, Trayvon Martin. First of all, George Zimmerman is not white, and the media tried to portray him as being white. Make no mistake about it, these two men are white. Now, I don't agree with the language and the verbiage on social media. There are African Americans and minorities out there. They have a right to be angry. Make no mistake about it. But do not pinpoint all white people that would do something like this. And there are some people on social media saying, you white people, this is what you do. No, it's not.
Yeah, look.
These people do not represent me. They don't represent you. And they don't represent the majority of white people in this country. But make no mistake about it, these two white people belong behind bars. This was a lynching. Make no mistake about it. That's exactly what this was. It is a lynching. And these two dumbasses, murderers, belong behind bars right now. It's going to the grand jury right now.
And I would argue that every single, because it sounds like good old boys club, systematic racism from the top on down.
And by the way,
that's what it sounds like to me.
This city
and everyone involved in that cover-up should, and I don't know if they should be going to jail, but they should certainly lose their positions, whatever those positions are.
This city has a history of racism, by the way. It does.
What's the population of the city?
I don't know the population.
It's Brunswick, right?
Yeah, I don't know the population. Here's what I do know. They hid this underneath the rug, and now it's going to a grand jury. My question is, and it's a very fair question, and it's what many in the African-American community are asking, why are they not in jail right now? Please tell me what would have happened, ladies and gentlemen, if these were two African-Americans with guns that chased after a white man. I'll tell you what would have happened. Those two African-Americans would be in jail right now and probably facing 40 years. That's exactly what would have happened. It is the problem with society today. Now, do I think every city would handle it this way? No. Do I think everybody in America is racist? No. Do I think some are? Absolutely. And this is a perfect example of that. Now, there are some stories coming out. There might be a possibility that Ahmaud Arbery had some mental illness. There were stories that came out that he was seen looking through a house that was under construction. So what? It's not a crime. And even if he was mentally ill, that makes me even feel more sorry for the guy, because he didn't know how to handle that situation, and he was probably very scared and very frightened. I feel horrible for his family and friends. We need justice. And I'm not talking about 2 or 3 years in jail for involuntary manslaughter. Put these bastards behind bars for 20 years. That's it. Lock up, put away the key. That's it. It's done.
And if he had mental illness, it wasn't debilitating because he was 25 years old. He was a former high school athlete. He was basically trying to keep himself in shape by just running around his neighborhood or running around his city on a consistent basis. It's not like he was, overly on the spectrum or something along those lines.
Well, number one, we don't know that. We don't know the extent if he had mental illness. Number two, I don't know what that has to do with him being lynched and killed. Whether he was mentally ill or not, it makes it just as bad.
I'm saying it's not an excuse.
What do you mean it's not an excuse?
It's not an excuse to say who
I'm not saying the shooter was mentally ill.
No, I'm saying Ahmaud Arbery. Yeah, it doesn't make a difference that he's mentally ill. That it's totally irrelevant in my opinion at this point. That shouldn't be some type of but he was mentally ill. Why would you make a statement like that to justify a murder? Is what I'm asking.
What do you mean? That's exactly the opposite of what I'm doing. I'm not saying that the shooter.
I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about the fact that that's even brought up, the mental illness. Why even bring up the mental illness?
Okay, here's the reason why I think it's if it is important to bring that up, because he may have acted a little bit irrationally. I'm not defending the two idiots. I made it very clear that I think they're murderers.
I can tell you, if two strangers, one of which was 64, one of which was 34, one had a shotgun, one had a gun, was pointed in my face, I would freak out too if I don't know who they were.
Right.
I would go absolutely nuts.
And maybe even,
and I feel like 99% of the country would do the exact same thing.
And maybe even worse if you were mentally ill. That's why I bring that up. And I don't think it really has much of a bearing on the case. But we're going to learn more facts about this kid as we go on. But as far as I know, the idiots that are friends of the shooters that are defending them are saying that he had a shoplifting incident, which has zero bearing on this, by the way. What the hell does shoplifting have to do with this?
Well, and I believe it's a misdemeanor.
It doesn't even matter, though. It has absolutely.
And last I checked, misdemeanors don't exactly result in death.
But misdemeanor or felony, my opinion stays the same. What the hell are two people doing acting as police officers with guns? They're not police officers. Why are they taking matters into their own hands, trying to be the heroes here when they are nothing but ignorant buffoons? And now they're probably going to spend a lot of time behind bars. I'm going to tell you something right now. Unless some unbelievable evidence comes out that this kid had just committed a very serious crime, even if that's the case, which, by the way, I don't think it is. But even if that was the case, it still doesn't justify following someone with shotguns. It's disgusting. And I'm telling you right now, these guys are going to jail. I think the son is probably going to go to jail a little bit longer because he's the one who pulled the trigger. But the father's got to go to jail, too, because he took out a gun as well. And he was the one who's probably perpetuating this whole thing. And he thinks just because he was in law enforcement, he has the right to act like a police officer. It's a disgusting joke. And they do not represent white people across the country. Sadly, some, but not the majority. But this is just awful. And I'm telling you right now, if not for the coronavirus, this would be the headline on every news station across the country right now because it needs to be discussed. It needs to be talked about. And I pose this question again, JD. If these are two African Americans, just a different skin color, that are following a white guy, and the same thing went down, what do you think would happen right now? Where would those two African Americans be?
Most likely in jail.
Yeah,
most likely.
I think that's a pretty fair.
I do want to pose this question: if Mr. What's his Carmichael?
No, you're talking about McMichael.
McMichael. If Mr. McMichael was not connected to the Attorney General and didn't have the connections that he has, and he was Caucasian, but he wasn't a well-connected man, and this happened to him and his son, where do you think they would be? I think that a lot of this has to do with the fact that this particular person and his son have those high-level connections. And to me, that's scary because if something like this can happen, and again, you're right, if there wasn't a video at this point, we would know nothing about it because, again, it was reported as a home invasion. And under those circumstances, I'm sure that, self-defense, you can walk into someone's home, especially in a state like Texas, and you can shoot them if they come into your home if you think if you feel in danger or your property is in danger.
I don't think.
And so I think that under these circumstances, it's really scary. You have to ask yourself, how often does this happen across the country where someone who has high-level connections commits a crime, lies about it, and gets away with it scot-free where there's not video involved?
Here's your answer. If there was no video, these two wouldn't be facing anything. There'd be no grand jury. I'll answer it in two different parts. It's very simple. I'll give you two answers. There's two factors here. One factor is race, and nobody can deny that. There's race involved here, and there's racial bias, and there's racism. And the second one is what you just mentioned, the fact that this father used to be in law enforcement. He certainly has connections.
But he had friends in high places.
Sure, no question about that. But you can't.
That could change the narrative.
Absolutely, and I'm saying it has. But I'm also saying race is a factor. There's two factors here, and those two factors should never get involved in a fair investigation and justice for somebody because of the color of one's skin. And because somebody used to be a police officer. We see this stuff happen all the time, particularly with people that are in law enforcement that break the law. We see it all the time. We see the videos on YouTube of a police officer who might be driving drunk that get out scot-free because they have a badge. And I'm tired of it. Police officers, whether you've formerly in law enforcement or currently in law enforcement, should be held to even a higher standard than regular citizens that are not in law enforcement. This is disgusting. And the fact that this guy was in law enforcement speaks volumes about some of the people that are in law enforcement today. Not the majority of them. I think the majority of people in law enforcement are great people. I think they're heroes. But there are some in law enforcement that are really bad apples. We need to get those bad apples out. Get them out.
Drain the swamp.
And I feel so horrible for this young man's family. I can't imagine the pain they've gone through. I thank God that there's somebody that had a video of this, because I guarantee you there'd be no accountability if there was no video. And the fact that police, and by the way, I don't believe police officers knew there was a video right away. and that's probably why they lied to the mother, and they staged something that did not happen. There was no home invasion, and make no mistake about it, there was nobody in a home that shot this kid. There is video right there for you to see it, folks, if you don't believe me. Right there for you to see it.
And where did the video come from, Brian?
It came from a dash cam. It came from a dash cam.